everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bennick, and I love talking about cards in new contexts is what I love.
Cards, easy for you to say.
Cards in Welcome to Cards in Context.
Cards in Context.
We're your host, Card Talk. It's a show within a show, gentlemen. That's what we're going to have.
It's a show within a show. What does that mean?
But to sponsor the new show, Cards in Context, we're going to need to steal some patrons from our current show, Card Talk.
Yes, we are. So, we actually have a new patron that just subscribed, so thank you to Jason. And so I assume Jason is a he, but maybe not. But Jason, thank you so much for becoming a patron. And the rest of the patrons, we have Miles, Ryan, Manuel, Grant, Katie, Eric, Rachel, Tony, Valentin, Eric, Dern's father, Moritz, Anders, Shane, Micah, Chris, Reagan, Robert, Brandon, Scott, Joe, Alex, Edmund, Peter, Joe, Niall, Carl, Vardane, James, Joshua, Matt, Russ, Justin, Jason, Robert, Kyle, Daniel, Mike, Robert, David, Sean, Lou, Phil, Joseph, and Dominic. That is a lot of people right there. And
he didn't pass out yet.
Yeah, we finally got the list long enough to where David can't do it all in one breath. So
I know.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Yes, it's uncomfortable.
It's at the very least for making David, uncomfortable every episode, which is really what I always want.
I mean, that's exactly what everybody wants to hear, right? Is uncomfortable Dave. If you out there want to become a patron, if you like what we do in the show, you can join right down here below Ted's head here, or covering Ted's head. It's patreon.com/cardtalk2018. And also, don't forget to check out our blog at the same address, cardtalk2018.com, where Matt over there has been holding it down and posting all sorts of card reviews about stuff that we are doing concurrently and stuff that we've done in the past. And if you want to become a card reviewer, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you set up, especially if you have something to say. I know that a lot of you have contacted me saying you like to scream at your device while we're talking because you know that what we're saying is wrong or is not good or whatever. So if you're interested, reach out either through social media, Grant, Ted, myself, or through the email address, cardtalk2018@gmail.com, and we will get you set up over at the blog. So that was our gift to you guys for our little pandemic project. And so that's good. But today we have something interesting. We're going to break format just a little bit. It's not Superlative February yet, or it's not our extravaganza month yet, but it's leading up to Con of the Ring. So, Grant, what is it that we're going to be doing today?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what you might want to bring to a convention. Cards that you may not see play in like normal games because you don't either have enough people to play with, or just cards that are better for multiplayer.
Yeah, and so today we're going to tackle those leadership cards that we want to maybe bring to the con. The Con of the Rings is happening, as far as we know, as of the recording of this show on August 17th. It's happening in a month and a half. Right, Ted? So we want to make sure.
Mark your calendars.
Sneak it up on people. So, we just want to make sure that as we get prepared for the con, that, we're giving people some advice on what to bring. So, I'll kind of mention the cards, and Grant, Ted, and I will talk about them. One of the first cards that I think that anybody wants to bring, and it's not unique, so everybody can bring 3 copies of this and play it, is Campfire Tales. So Grant, what does Campfire Tales do?
Well, you spend one leadership resource, and everybody gets to draw a card.
Yeah, very simple, but it's very good. Ted has that look.
Yeah.
So, like, Ted, talk a little bit about Campfire Tales.
Yeah. Anytime you're playing cards, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to just point out, make a couple suggestions, as you guys said, to cards you might not play if you're primarily playing solo or maybe 2-player, if you don't play many 3 or 4-player games, which you'll get a chance to do at the convention. So Campfire Tales, if you just kind of look at the ratio to what you're spending to what you're getting, you're spending 1 resource, and then every player draws 1 card. So it's 1 resource for 4 cards, which, I can't think of a better ratio of spending resources to net cards than Campfire Tales in a 4-player game.
Definitely not the Rod of the Steward, right?
Yeah, it's let's say 1 for 3 is really good. You get that from Ancient Matham, you get that from Mithrandir's Advice. So now you're paying 1 for 4, and you're spreading the wealth around too, which is really key in multiplayer. A lot of these cards are going to do that. That's why we want to point them out.
Yeah, and I think that cards that scale are just cards that somebody like me, and Ted, you said it, like Campfire Tales is a card that scales because every player is drawing a card. And so it's cards that you kind of, if you're deck building, and this may be your first time going to a con, like it's cards like that you don't think about or read all the time, and so you may never revisit it. So it's always good to have like a reminder about these sorts of cards too. And so Campfire Tales, I think, is one of those cards that will help show your quality at a table when you're playing 4-player anything. It's if you have the leadership icon, it's not cost prohibitive in the slightest. And
yep. You can splash it too, which is really easy. So if you've even got 1 leadership hero, it's really considerate.
Right.
And considering leadership has multiple ways of resource generation, it's basically a freebie.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. And Grant, we the next on our list is Man the Walls. So what is Man the Walls, and maybe tell us why that card is good.
Just give us a minute to pull that one up. Because I don't have the list in front of us, I can't.
Gotta recite it off memory, Grant.
Yeah.
I got you.
Right.
Yeah, Grant. I bet you Ted could say it from memory. Not to challenge you, but I bet you. Here's what we'll do. Ted, go ahead. Okay. You say it, and Grant will see if you're right or not.
Okay. I don't have it in front of me, so it's a 0-cost leadership event, and it's a planning action that the first ally played during each player's played this phase has their cost reduced by 1.
And I think it's limit 1 per. Right.
Oh yes, it is. Yep. So I forgot that. I'm pretty sure it's limit one per phase, so you can't play 2 and have them stack.
Right.
You are so close.
Oh, what is it? Go ahead, Grant.
0 cost. Play only if no other copies of Man the Walls have been played this round.
This is that's the limit we were talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So okay.
Planning action, reduce the cost of the first ally played by each player this phase by 1. Those allies cannot quest this round.
Oh, that's right. They can't quest.
That's right. They can't quest.
Which is great. I remember I played this. So one of the things that I did, and we'll talk about this maybe a little later during this episode, is that you can build specialized decks when you're playing 3 and 4 player or playing at the con, and people like to have those sorts of things. If you know somebody is going to bring I don't know, like an attacking defending deck, something that can deal with all of combat, then that helps, it just makes everybody feel a little bit better. And so I remember I brought an Outlands deck that was really focused on combat, right? Outlands can do a lot of things. It can quest, and I mean, Outlands is crazy, but I remember putting in Man the Walls, and I drew 2 of them in my starting hand last Con of the Rings, And normally, if you draw 2 cards that are the same, typically within circumstances, but typically that's a mulligan because you don't want to have 2 cards floating around your hand. But 2 man the walls in your hand, you make a lot of friends really quickly when you're playing that because it's just people want to have that reduction. And it scales really nicely. I mean, you can play it 1 player solo or 2 player, but it just when you can. Typically, you don't want to lose the questing from when you're playing solo, so you don't play this card solo because you don't want to lose you need your ally to do stuff. Obviously, there's timing things that you can worry about, but this card is way more effective in 4 player. And so that's just so everybody knows, that's the famous Cardboard of the Rings. Eagles of the North came and smashed ships when John was talking about drawing Eagles of the North. He drew Eagles of the North as one of the last cards in the deck. The deck was shuffled up, and he drew it as the top card of the deck again. So 2 of the reveals were Eagles of the North. It was wild. John from Cardboard of the Rings, Electron John, was pretty excited about that. So anyways, all of that to say is that Man of the Walls is pretty good. Yeah, I apologize for monopolizing conversation. Ted, what were you going to say?
Just to add on to what you said, it's a 0 cost card. So again, if you're running a single leadership hero, really consider this in your deck. Aside from maybe the only catch is the 3 Hunters contract is out and about now, and that deck has no allies, so it won't benefit 3 Hunters deck. But aside from that, pretty good chance for you're spending no resources to play it, and you're potentially gaining 4 resources if everybody has an ally to play. And that's it's just, you draw the card, it's 4 resources for the table. Very similar to Campfire Tales in its efficiency.
Yeah. Yep. And you're not losing a resource in the process either.
Yeah. And you're still getting a benefit too from it. And so is everyone else. They might be able to drop a more expensive ally a turn sooner.
Right. If you have one of those 4 cost allies and you only have 3 heroes on the board, if you have Treebeard, right? Like you can afford Treebeard the first round.
It's great. It's so great with Ent decks because the Ents come into play exhausted anyway. So now you're letting someone play a booming Ent for 1 resource. Like,
right.
Come on.
Like, okay. Right. Yeah. It works out pretty well. Grant, have you had a chance to play Man the Walls, maybe in your epic multiplayer stuff?
I've seen it's went off a few times in different games I've played over the past couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Now, generally speaking, I'm playing 3 Hunters.
Right.
But I have had a game where I was running Hobbits and someone did play Man the Walls. I got Gaffer out for 1 resource.
Yeah. Right. Gaffer's nice to get out there, right?
And then I kept my threat between 17 and 10 the entire game.
17 and 10?
Yep.
Jeez. Just keep it down, right?
That's awesome. Yeah. That game was a fun game. I can't remember who I was playing with at that point in time. But Man the Walls obviously is great for getting that cost reduction down. But as Ted said, it's not ideal when somebody's running 3 Hunters.
But
so
yeah,
I'm willing to take that chance because
oh, definitely. I mean, I'd probably end up sideboarding this and find out how many people are actually running 3
If everybody's running a 300 stack, it's fine.
Even if you get 3 players to do this, it's still 100% worth the
definitely
resources you played for it. You paid for it. Right. So,
but what I was getting at is if it's only 1 player there that's running, say, allies, the rest of them are running 3 Hunters, I'd probably swap this out for
100% in that
Campfire
scenario.
Tales.
Something else. Yeah,
put Campfire Tales in it. Or maybe the next card you wouldn't want to do this. The next card we have is Grim Resolve.
Well, I'll probably put that in over this anyway. If everybody was running 3 Hunters.
Grim Resolve, let me see. Does that ready every character in play?
Yes,
Every
for the
character in
cost-
play.
5,
For the cost
right?
of 5 resources, yeah.
5 leadership resource event. That's it. If you are a character, you are ready, unless there's some prohibitive game effect that prevents you from reading for that turn.
Right. And when you are playing multiplayer, these 5 cost events become more reasonable to save for and to try to play. Not that Grim Resolve is the be all and end all of 5 cost events, but to be able to ready each character, I feel.
Oh my God!
I feel like if you're running 2 leadership heroes, and you play this and and you're like, hey guys, can you just pick up the slack for me for a round, and then next round, I gotcha. Like, I think that's one of those things that people forgive you. That's one of the things that happens in multiplayer, is that people can make up for mistakes, or for a round of setup that you need. The other 3 players can make up for it, and so that's what makes this card more likely to be super useful. Not to say that when you're playing solo, Grim Resolve is great. But to save up for 5, you probably want to, you probably have to be running a mono leadership deck, and like it's just not one of those things that's gonna go off and be helpful as much. When you're playing 4-player, you can say, hey, Ted, Grant, Matt, you guys pick up the slack. I'm gonna just, this round I'm gonna go light, and then I'll play Grim Resolve next round, and it's like boom, and then you get your rush. Or you play it, at whatever time you can.
You need it.
Yeah, you need it. Because you can
if-
save for it, and then you have a bank for it.
Yeah, there are some very, depending on the scenario you're playing, there's some ways to plan for it and say, oh, wow, next turn we're going to advance, and then we have a bunch of combat to do because maybe enemies spawn.
Right.
And you can have an answer to that problem for your whole table. And they'll be like, oh, wow, thank you.
Right.
Problem solved.
Right, because typically, not all the time, but typically you advance in the quest phase. So, so everybody may be exhausted to quest, and then you can ready them after that, and then everybody's ready to attack.
Bad treacheries come out that spawn extra enemies, surge enemies.
Yep.
Tons of cases for it.
Right. What about strength of arms? Grant?
Much in the same vein.
What's strength of arms?
Does anybody want to read it off and see if they can get it right?
I'll go from memory again. Thank you very much.
I got Grim Resolve. That was good. I don't memorize cards, but I can't. I wouldn't be able to tell you what Strength of Arms does.
Grim Resolve might have like the shortest game text of any event.
Yeah,
just ready all characters in play. It's like the least number of words.
Right. Ready all characters.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Ready all characters in play.
Cards.
It said
cards in play.
Character card. Yeah.
Well, whatever.
Okay,
they got so wordy back in the core set.
Yeah. Right. We'll take that one up with Nate.
Yeah.
So much in the same vein, Strength of Arms is a 2-cost leadership event, and it's worded where all of your heroes have to have the printed leadership resource icon to play this. So you can't use songs. Gandalf you could use if you were using his ability to play it off the top card of your deck. Otherwise, you have to be running mono leadership for this. Or your character has to say they have the printed effect, essentially. But this readies all allies in play for 2 resources.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. There it is. That's the card that I was thinking. I was thinking it was that, and then I was like, okay, good. Is that the one with the banner on it? It's got like a greenish banner on it? Yeah.
Yep.
So again, and I say this because these are the cards that I kind of look over when I'm building a deck. Strength of Arms is good if you're building an ally swarm, but playing solo, you need to do a lot in such a little amount of space that sometimes those sorts of cards get cut because you need to have, something else going on in there.
Yeah, and it's another compounding or multiplicative effect, whatever the best math term is, because you have in a 4-player game, again, you're spending 2 resources, but if you have 4 players with 3 allies each, you're readying 12 characters. Same thing with Grim Resolve. You're readying more characters for the same amount of resources.
And they're not phase limited. Like Man the Walls is phase limited, so you can play it. You have to play it in the planning phase, but Strength of Arms Grim Resolve is not phase limited, so you can play it whenever you want.
Yeah, combat phase, quest phase, travel phase. You can play it anywhere. Again, there's
that ever popular travel phase that you want to have a whole bunch of ready people. It may help because then you can have ready people, travel and then for encounters and stuff like that. But one of the honorable mentions that I was thinking of is Errand Rider, which allows you to pass tokens, resources anywhere on the board. And again, that's somebody that would not, playing solo. You look at Errand Rider and you're like, it's fine from one hero to the next hero. But Errand Rider becomes super awesome when you're playing 4 players, because then you can take that resource and you can push it off to anywhere you want.
Yeah, and just one thing I want to say about Strength of Arms, it works great in a Grey Wanderer deck.
Those decks are very ally heavy, tend to be.
And if you're in the printed leadership restriction, if you're running 1 leadership hero, you don't have to worry about said restriction.
Yeah, that's a good point. It becomes easier to play if you're playing a Grey Wanderer deck and your 1 hero is leadership.
Yeah.
But Aaron to mention Errand Rider, that's a great mention, David, because it's just so many times don't you just wish you had 1 more resource as a player? You're like, if I just had 1 more resource, I could play my Northern Tracker this turn, or I could play my threat reduction card this turn, or my Legolas ally this turn. Well, you can enable people to put those cards on the table by giving them a resource, and it's a reusable effect.
Right.
And
you don't mind, it's a chump blocker, and you don't mind having the Errand Rider, die, to a hill troll or what? Maybe not a hill troll because he'd take 5 threat, but but the point is that you can chump him, and it's like, oh well, whatever.
Yeah, they got 2 hit points too, so they can take a point of archery, and it really, really helps. And I would strongly consider it if you are going to put Steward of Gondor in your deck and be the player who sort of claims Steward, of course, with the decks nowadays, there's plenty of decks that don't run that Steward of Gondor at all. But if you're playing it and you're playing leadership, really consider Errand Rider, because you're amassing all these resources, and there's going to be turns where you're going to want to be able to share them in Errand Rider.
Yeah, and Errand Rider is non-unique, so you can pass 3. You get 3 of them out, you pass 3 of them around, and you get 3 resources around. Spread the wealth. Life becomes good, right?
Yep.
So I was going to go in one direction, but now I'm going to take a hard left turn here and go into a different direction, because Ted, you just brought it up, and Grant, you may have some interesting solutions, because I know when you and I are playing 2-player, we've had this come up. But if you're going to be running Steward of Gondor, what are some cards at a con? The thing is when you have your local play group, you're probably building with them and you know who they are and things like that. With a con, you could be playing with anybody, and so you don't know what decks they have and what decks they're built. So when you're playing Steward of Gondor, what are some options that you could use to substitute Steward of Gondor for, what cards could you use in place of Steward of Gondor? Grant?
Well, you've got things like Resourceful and the Necklace of Geryon.
The necklace, I feel like, is the next best thing. I know it's a guarded card, Ted. I know how much you hate guarded cards, but the necklace to me is like the next best thing for Steward, right? Because it's possible when you sit down to people you haven't ever met before in real life, you sit down and you're like, oh, I have Steward. Oh, I have Steward. Steward's vital to my have Steward. And now all of a sudden you have to figure something out. Keep going. I'm sorry.
You've got Orcrist and Theodred is another good one for smoothing resources.
Yeah, consider that's a good point, Grant. Consider a hero that does that, like Theodred or Glowin. There's a couple ways you can accomplish that.
You've got the Envoy of Pelagia. if you meet the trait requirements. Proud Hunters is another one. Add X resources to the hero's pool. X is a destroyed enemy's printed threat. So if you've got a 3 threat enemy, you kill that. That's 3 resources there. Again, you've got to have a character with a noble trait and another unique character. 2 unique characters, one with a noble trait and one with a ranger trait. But that's not so hard to get these days.
It's not so hard to get.
No,
I know. I mean, it's...
if you're running dwarves and sylvans, unlikely friendship, there is literally dozens of ways of getting resources. If you're running another hero, Biffa is a good way to gain resources. If somebody else has got Steward and you're running a lore-heavy cost curve, Biffa might be a way of getting more resources because anybody can give him a resource.
Right.
Horn of Gondor and Gloin. If he takes damage, you generate resources.
Yeah, glowing is good for that reason. And then I'm thinking of all the ways that if you are playing Steward of Gondor, because how many times do you play Steward of Gondor and you end up with a hero that has, the game lasts for 8, 9, 10 rounds and you end up with a hero that's got, 13 resources on it, right?
Easily.
Like something stupid like that, because you can't ever spend it. So this is where, you want to make sure that, you have things like Errand Rider and parting gifts, right? Things that allow you to spread the wealth around to the people you're playing with, not because you're trying to be a good guy, but because I think that you get more of a chance of winning if you're able to spread the resources aren't doing you any good in front of you, right? So if you can, when you're constructing your con decks, it's great to be able to just, take any number of resources and just throw it to whoever you want like that. And yes, people may be like happy about that, but that just means that they're able to play the cards that they need to be able to play. So parting gifts is always in that, thing. And if they're able to play the cards, that's more likely that you're going to be able to win the scenario. As opposed to
everything you're doing is helping you advance your team.
Right.
I mean, I'm slightly cheeky. I'll run Rod of the Steward. And I'll just draw the cards.
Yeah, I would general advice, since we're talking, these are leadership cards, is try not to build your deck around Steward. Now, if everyone does that, then no one's playing it. But I would consider it being more actually of a sideboard card. Don't build your deck around it, but be like, oh, is anyone running Steward? No? Oh, great. I'm going to put it in my deck. You're running at least maybe even one leadership hero is enough to do that. Yeah,
I mean, I've got a few decks that have it in. That I could probably take it out of. My Irma 3 Hunters one, Irma takes the lead. I could probably take out Steward of Gondor, but it's there, so Irma can always attack into the staging area. Even if he's not doing it that turn, the resources are always going to come in handy.
Right.
But it's just a bit of a safety net there, so he can always do it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And that's you bring that sort of setup to the, nobody's going to argue if Amher's attacking into the staging area, playing 4 player, like that's not something that people are going to be, can you hold back Amher for me, please? I need to get, that's not something that people are going to do. So, that's, I don't want to say you have to be able to justify running Steward of Gondor, but you want to make sure that you have ways that you're actually using Steward of Gondor. It's a feel bad moment if the guy who said he needed Steward of Gondor and you were like, no, I really need Steward of Gondor. And you're sitting there and you're not really doing the things you need to do with it. So,
yeah.
Ted, you sound like you've been that guy before.
It happens, right? It's like, right. Just the way the game is written. Like it's like, oh, this tech has won me, 30 games before, and this time it's not working.
Yeah, I've had that quite a few times.
Yeah, so that stuff happens. It's all part of the game, and everyone's been there, and they're gonna have a pretty good chuckle about it. So, but just stuff to keep in mind as you're making your plans.
Right. Well, let's call that an episode. We talked about leadership cards and, some substitutions for Steward of Gondor. And let's come back and next week talk about a new sphere and do the same thing and have some other side conversations about some other cards and things, some con mentality. Does that sound like a plan, guys?
I'll be there for the next episode. I mean,
Grant, you going to be there for the next episode?
Nah, I think I'll take a miss.
It's funny because I'm so used to ending the card. It's a highly scientific yet arbitrary system. So there's no highly arbitrary, it's highly scientific yet arbitrary system this time. It's just, guys, I'll see you again next week. Okay. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.